Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel that totally isn't just becoming Minecraft content, I swear. So, say you wanted to design a clock in Minecraft. Alright, that was easy. Now it's time to do a little bit of villager trading. Oh. Oh, he hasn't restocked yet. Okay, so after a quick Google search, it looks like villagers can restock anytime between 8 o'clock and 12 o'clock. So, when is that? This clock is kind of bollocks, huh? Bollocks? That kind of doesn't really flow without the accent. It's garbage, it's trash, it's bad. Like, I can just look up and tell what time it is, just as good as this thing. So the next thing you did is you booted up your redstone testing world and you built yourself one of these. It's just a daylight detector with some redstone running down, and then redstone lamps tells you the time, kind of. And if you were particularly clever, you even made it round. Good luck trying to evenly space 15 blocks in what even remotely resembles a circle, you idiot. But none of that tells us what hour it is. And that's the important part. So that means it's time to really get serious. Problem number 1, timing. Except it's not a problem because Etho already solved it basically the nanosecond it was possible with the famous Hopper clock. It's just got some iron bars inside that move back and forth, causing this mechanism to trigger that thing and do this other stuff, and boom, clock, back and forth. Now you don't know the exact timing you'll need later, but that can be calibrated when that bridge is to be crossed, or however that saying goes. Allow me to paint you a picture. So, you've set up your clock, it's working perfectly, it's amazing, it's got timing, it's doing whatever it's supposed to do. But then, oh no, someone goes to sleep, the timing's all messed up. Now you've got another problem. Introducing the dual hopper clock. Now, with the power of building the exact same thing right next to each other, you can have one hopper clock in reserve all the time for whenever you need to switch to that one so that the timing is totally reset, literally always forever, in an effort to conserve space, which is always a good thing when building a redstone contraption, and totally not because you accidentally built them too close to each other. You decided to build them literally as close as possible and just raise this one up. And of course, if you didn't want the two circuits to interfere with each other, which you don't, you simply place these blocks here, they're no longer connected, and this whole thing works perfectly, for sure, trust me. And to make this a reality, you've built this handy dandy tiny little mechanism here, so when this lever's this way, this man's moving, and when you go over here, your boy's moving this way. And look at that, it's going perfectly. So if we want to make use of this, we just put down some observers, and we are good to go. Now, if you've been following along and testing everything as we go, instead of just taking my word for everything like the lazy baboon you are, you would realize that sometimes when we turn off the switch, this goes an extra time, which cannot happen. This cannot happen. We can't have this, because that'll send an extra signal through the clock, it'll tell it to change time, and it'll just be off. It'll be wrong. It's terrible. It's bad. So to solve that problem, we just put a little block on a sticky piston like this, so that when we flip this lever, this guy instantly goes down, this guy goes up, and now we're able to get the different note block sound without this guy changing one more time and screwing everything up and just ruining the whole contraption. And if you're annoyed by this note block, I had to test the darn thing, so you can just deal with it. Now you can happily just connect these two lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, stick a command block here, that just tells you the time. Another quick Google search has told you that the time between hours in Minecraft is 50 seconds, and after a painful amount of testing, you finally determined that the optimal amount of items is a stack plus 61. Except not really, you still need the slight time delay because exactly 50 seconds is really between two items. Okay, so now you're feeling good, so you're like, alright, now I need a little mechanism that will toggle this whatever thing, ideally at 6 a.m., which is the time it is when you wake up from a bed. And it just so happens that our handy dandy little daylight detector that we threw away a little earlier yields 7 redstone. It goes from 6 to 7, right at about kind of almost exactly, but not quite, 6 a.m., which is, as they say in Minecraft, good enough. So now this is where the redstone admittedly gets a little bit more haha goofy, if you know what I'm saying. So, if you're not totally brushed up on your comparators, and honestly, that's kind of amazing if you're not, because I don't know how you came up with this circuit. Okay, honestly, I'm not really sure what I was talking about. I'm gonna leave this for now, and if there's a problem with it, you won't see this part of the video. And if there's no problem with it and everything's fine, then I'm a little goofball. But alright, so now I've got something kind of interesting here. This is a standard T flip-flop where normally you would just push this redstone block forward and then it would come back a couple of seconds later, and this would cause us to get a single pulse, which would tick this block forward, and this is a sticky piston pushing the piston, yeah, all that stuff. But this daylight detector is going to read 7 when we first wake up, and it's going to be less than 7 by the time we're allowed to sleep again, in theory, which means that after basically half of an entire Minecraft day, this block will finally retract, and it will be able to reset when we sleep again. Yeah, so that's an extremely long T flip-flop duty cycle, but it's fine, it's whatever. It's not the duty cycle, it's this duty cycle, this part right here is what I'm talking about. Moving on. And then when this block gets pushed forward, it gets powered by this redstone torch, which powers this line, which is our circuit from before, and we've got ourselves a swapping hopper clock. So perhaps your flippity-floppity, swippity-swappity circuit wasn't as complicated as you anticipated. Regardless, we're going to need to move on to now counting the hours, and to do that, we're going to grab another cool piece of tech that you didn't come up with called the binary counter. This is an ingenious little contraption here. So this is a binary clock. Every time this redstone torch pulses, it's going to turn off this entire line of redstone, which is going to allow these hoppers to activate. There's a single item in here, and it's going to activate for just long enough to allow that item to go to the next hopper, and then it's going to turn back on, turn off all of the hoppers, and yeah, binary counter, kind of amazing. Look at that. Look at that. Now, I don't really know who invented this thing, but I'm sure if this video gains relevant enough traction, then some know-it-all in the comments will let me know, and they'll get themselves a free little pin. Isn't that nice? As a side note, hopefully at this point you'll have noticed in testing that this repeater needs to be set to at least 2 ticks, not more because that would cause the clock to lag, but certainly not less because then this wouldn't turn off long enough. And if you didn't notice that, well, you don't really have a working binary counter now, do you? Yes, I've just realized that's not actually a binary counter. I have my head down in shame, no worries. Now, if you're clever, you may have instantly realized that, okay, well, if I go to sleep, I'm still going to have this item in this hopper, or if anything, it's going to go to the next hopper, and then I'll get a new item here, and it's just going to be a huge mess. And if you're not clever, you may have at least noticed that you're going to lose your item when it gets to the end, and you've only got a finite amount of items, unless you put, like, 2 chickens here and they lay eggs every 20 minutes. But other than that, so now you've realized that you should have built this entire circuit facing this way instead so that it connected more easily over to here, and you've built this nifty-difty, spiffy little circuit where whenever this triggers, which would be first thing in the morning, and make sure that this right here is set to 2 ticks, or the single pulse will not actually do any of this stuff. We then turn off all of these redstone torches, which allows for these little hopper guys to collect the items from inside these little hopper guys. You just want to make sure this dropper, which is somewhat filled with items, doesn't need to be a whole lot, also eventually receives some signal, but with greater delay, so that when we add the new item up here, then this whole thing doesn't just instantly swallow up that item. After endless painful hours of debugging, because it literally takes 20 minutes to run this thing all the way through and see if it works, only for it to fail, and items getting stuck at the end there, and all kinds of other nonsense, you decided to create this little comparator clock to allow these torches to be off for a little bit longer and have more items come over here and do things and whatnot, and the stuff and the like. Which even forced you to come up with a backup power source for the switcheroo counter guy, just so that it would stay on while this whole operation was happening. And then finally, we need this mechanism, exactly this mechanism, the way you're seeing me build it, and no deviations otherwise. Just exactly like this. Oh my gosh. So that the clock can reset at least once a day, even if no one sleeps, ever. No one ever sleeps on the server, ever. Why? Why don't people ever? Once again, to push an item into the system from this dropper. Finally, after all of your testing and debugging, you get to just sit down and design a really cool clock face. And then you just need to hook it all up. Okay, I'll be the first to admit this looks absolutely atrocious, but I actually have a much cleaner and cooler design that I'm going to be building on the server. And for now, I will just spend the next several hours making sure this actually works. So now I'm over here in my real-life redstone testing world, where I've actually put what looks like a giant 7-segment display as the clock face instead of a normal standard analog circular face. Now, the only thing that actually has a 7-segment display behind it is this right here, the second digit of the hour hand, which was designed by Rusty, link in the description below. The 2-minute digits don't have values behind them because that would be ridiculous to include, and also probably no one cares. But then we've got, actually you just saw it right here, this AM changed to PM once we reach this point here in the 7-segment display. So what's cool about using this design is we can literally plug it directly into each of the outputs of the counter. Whereas with the other design, we had to somehow separate all the signals and map them to a part on the clock face. Then there's this tiny circuit right here, which just takes the output from 10, 11, and 12 o'clock so that this turns from no output to a nice 1. You can see right there. There's another T flip-flop circuit over here to change the position of this block, as well as a reset mechanism here to push the block back if someone sleeps. Then you can ignore the circuit I showed you before. If you just wire this up, as you see here, then you can change this P to an A and vice versa, and that gets attached right here to this. Finally, the really cool thing about this 7-segment display design is it's actually not exactly how it was in the tutorial. The tutorial went from 0 to 9. This actually goes 6, because that's the start of the day, 7, 8, 9. I don't have signs here, but this is a 0 for 10. This is a 1 for 11, and then a 2 for 12. And then it goes back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the actual sequence is 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That way, again, we can just hook it up directly to the counter and it works nicely. It's very satisfying and smooth. You can take a quick look at the sides here to see how it's been somewhat altered to allow for those different segment values. And that just about does it for the clock. I'll see you all on Scrummagecraft.